All right, Michele, I'm so glad to have you, the youngest dragon from Dragon's Den and the founder of Clairbank. Michele, thank you for being here.
Oh, of course. I'm super excited to be here.
All right, Michele, I have some questions that for the members of Private Investment Club and the attendees of the event that are coming on February 27th, 2021, the Capital Raising Bootcamp. So we all know you from Dragon's Den and from Clairbank, of course. And just tell us a little bit about how you started your entrepreneurial journey. How did that start?
Oh, I mean, this is a crazy story that you're gonna have to listen. But look, I went to Queen's University to study engineering because my parents told me I could study anything I wanted as long as it was engineering. So I had an abundance of choice. And by the time I had graduated, I figured out that worldwide supply of sturgeon caviar was down by 95%. And so was crazy enough to move to the East Coast, having never gone fishing before, and build a fishery from scratch.
Wow.
That's everything it sounds like: boats, fishermen, my hands knee deep in fish, the whole 9 yards. And it was quite a story. But that's how I got started, and then just kept building businesses from there.
What inspired you to take control of your financial freedom? Like, what inspired you to do that?
Um, the reality is that you're always at someone else's beck and call if you can't pay for things yourself. And it is a very hard reality for people to hear, but it is the absolute truth, right? If you have investors, if you have a partner that's paying for everything, it doesn't matter, you lose control. And so when you don't have capital, you always have to take the option that is the cheapest, which is really tough because you can't use capital to solve problems. And so that's why it became a priority for me. It's not the only thing that's important to me. It's not the number one thing that's important to me, but it was important for my own independence so that I didn't need to rely on anyone else. And I could build things that frankly people thought were impossible. And it was only because I worked very hard, but I was able to accumulate a little bit of capital as I grounded. I mean, it was 8 years as an entrepreneur until I had really made any amount of money. But from there, it made a big difference.
When I was growing up, people told me that money's not important, money's the root of all evil, money is this, money is that. If, in your view, in your point of view, how important is money if it is important to you?
Um, I don't think money is the most important thing. Again, you have to think about it as a tool, and I've never thought of it as being evil if you're using it for the right things. And I think that that's really, many businesses can't get the capital to scale and so never scale. I mean, that to me is incredibly unfair. And I look at, the history of capital, and it was the folks with the money that always got to choose what was built. I mean, if you were a king, you got to choose what roads were built and what products were built. And now that today is the venture capitalists of today. And so ultimately, if you think about access to capital to build a business being distributed very different, which is, I think, what we've done at Clearbank, that has a tremendous amount of power in an economy, because I really believe that great ideas do not just come from people with rich families or that grew up with a silver spoon. They actually come with people who have one-on-one experienced a problem. And that's where it gets really powerful.
Awesome, awesome. So you have said in the past that entrepreneurs, as an entrepreneur, you're failing 90% of the time and succeeding only 10% of the time. Tell us a little bit more about that. What do you mean by that?
Um, that's what it feels like. And that, you are not pushing yourself out of your comfort zone if you are not failing, right? Like, you are not building big enough, ambitious enough projects if you think that this is all the way up and to the right. And so that's really the process of innovation. Is you launch something. Again, I think 80 to 90% of my ideas have failed. That's my average. As I've done this for my whole life. And so that means you have to take every failure, you have to learn from that, and you have to keep building on the little thing that worked or the something that you learned. And eventually, one of those things just hits and it feels great, and it's an outsized outcome.
And how important is a mentor in growing your business, and how do you find that mentor?
Yeah. So mentors are incredibly important as you grow. And I think I've been super lucky to have, some incredible mentors. Some of them were there for a couple months or a year. Some of them have been in my life for 10 years. But, I don't always love the word mentor because it implies that there is a mentor mentee. Implies that there's one person doing all the giving and one person doing all the taking. And all great relationships are based on mutual benefit and just a tiny bit of quid pro quo, right? Like I'm going to help you and you're going to help me. And that is what produces a lot of care. And so when you think about building a great mentor, even if someone is 10 years older than you or 20 years older than you, think about the things that you can do that add to their life, that you are uniquely positioned to do. And I find that builds the best basis for great mentorship relationships.
And Michelle, how do you find a great mentor? Somebody, let's say, who's starting out maybe, or somewhere they had some success. How do you find a great mentor into your life? How do you bring them?
Um, I was never too clinical about how I did this, right? When people posted things on social media that I liked, I sent them a really quick comment or a DM. Many of those turned out to go nowhere. Some of those turned out to be great friendships. I would meet and introduce myself and always have, a 20-second elevator pitch ready for what I did and why it should matter and why people should pay attention. And then I generally try and keep in touch with people. And when people and things remind me of other people, I try to get in touch without any ask, because if you're just the person always doing the asking, that becomes a really strained relationship. When you say, look, I just saw, your favorite color or your favorite flower on something and just thinking about you, that makes a huge difference in building out a longer term relationship.
When I watch Dragon's Den and watch you on Dragon's Den, one of the things that I hear people who come in with their great ideas, some of them say that they come for the money, but then there's sometimes they come in and say, well, they really didn't come for the money. They came for, let's call it the rolodex or the connections and all. What's your feedback on that? What do you think about that?
It totally depends on the individual, right? There are founders that have done this many times before that want non-dilutive capital, and they should own their company because they're going to grow. There's also, first-time founders who are going to need way more time and mentorship. And so that is a completely individual ask of what you are looking for. I mean, as an investor, we're not here to build the business for you, but we can certainly tell you, these are the connections I can make. These are the people I know. And that exists. And so it's really about being clear about what you want. And I think that's completely reasonable, that there are some people that add such insane outsized value to a business. They are always worth it.
Yes, and it's more than just money. It's the leverage of money is there, but there's leverage of, let's say if you were working with somebody and you, because of your connections and your help, maybe there's a way sometimes the mentors can connect people to other people so the relationships are different to grow. And this is what I see a lot of times happens when people when they see Dragon's Den or they attend my trainings as well. They see somebody who has done what they want to do, and it's more than just the money for some people. And for others, it's just about raising the money so they can go to the next level. How important is it to hang around with like-minded people, or even better, people who have done what you want to do? How important is that?
I think that is just so important, to find a network of people that have taken risks before. I love you told me a story earlier where you said, look, I spent a year reading the story of all the founders. Like, I've done that too, and I still do that, right? It is impossible to not read the story of Steve Jobs or Jack Ma or the founder of McDonald's and realize that for the first decade of these companies, they almost didn't make it. And the story is mostly failure. And at the end, you're like, oh, this actually became something pretty big. But it's great to have those people in your life because they remind you that you shouldn't be just looking at minimizing risk. You should look at how to really create some big gains that can really get things off the floor as you're building something from scratch.
What's the best advice would you give to someone who is pitching to a dragon like yourself or an investor? What's the best advice would you give them?
So the first thing is make sure it's clear why you are the only person to make this business succeed. We see so many businesses that sound similar, but if you can tell us the story of like what makes you the entrepreneur uniquely, your unique insight, the unique connection that you can make it, I mean, that makes a huge amount of difference. The second thing is being both succinct and visual. So the more that you can tell us in fewer words and more images what something is, the faster it is. If people haven't visualized what your product or service is within the first 15 seconds of you talking, you've actually probably lost them already. And so I love using great either analogies or visual images to do so. And, probably the last one is sharing a couple of pieces of traction or high level numbers about why we should get excited about a business. Those would be my three. And last is practice, practice, practice. I cannot tell you how much today I still practice. When I go pitch, I have my notes, I get ready, I practice what I'm going to say when people challenge me. I practice how I'm going to answer certain questions. Like that is a huge part of getting good, because what happens is you get the confidence yourself to be able to deliver the sentence and the statement well. And then you can think about what the question is, as opposed to being nervous and then flustered. And then it's very, very difficult to answer things correctly.
That is awesome. All right. Perhaps the last question for me is, I'm sure you've heard about the WhatsApp policy. Both Elon Musk and Edward Snowden have talked about this. What's your feedback on that in regards to that?
I think there's this great line I heard on privacy a year ago, yes. And it was saying you don't care about free speech because let me get this right. Saying you don't care about privacy because you have nothing to hide is saying you don't care about free speech because you have nothing to say. Like you will have something to say, and privacy is really important. And I think this is the year where we are seeing so many technology companies change their policies and perspective on what it means to allow the user their privacy. And so I think people should be thinking about that. I think that is a right that we have to our own privacy, and it's going to become increasingly important.
That's awesome. Michele, I'm basically done. Is there anything you want to say about coming to the event or anything like that? And I'll just bring Cora. If you want to say something, that would be awesome.
Of course. No, I'm extremely excited to join everyone at the Capital Raising Bootcamp on February 27th. I can tell you firsthand, I have made every mistake myself. This knowledge is not coming from me reading a book. It's coming from me having invested in dozens of companies, losing a bunch of money, making some money. It's come from me raising, we've raised $500 million for ClearBank. And so I've kind of seen what this environment looks like. And with ClearBank, we've invested in an enormous amount of companies. So I can kind of give you perspective on the types of capital, how to get investors' attention, how to get a bidding war, and the do's and don'ts.
Michele, this is from me. Just have you ever invested with real estate investors or real estate or anything like that?
So to date, I have been mostly technology. I've looking at definitely things in the real estate. I've just done, it's a pretty small percentage of my portfolio to date.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
But you're going to teach me, Sunil, so I'm here to learn as well.
I would love to